In the Lab, a Texans podcast that takes a different look at things. Drew Dougherty and John Harris have their lab coats and goggles on, and the Bunsen burners burning. Here's Drew.
All right, friends, it's time for another In the Lab. As John Harris there on the left gets hydrated, I'm Drew Dougherty, and we're doing this from my house, his house, and hopefully your house or apartment or wherever you live. Tent, that qualifies for all you scouts out there and campers. What's up, dude?
Scouts. It's funny when you said scouts, I was like, man, what NFL scouts are living out in a tent? And I was like, oh no, you meant like Boy Scouts, Eagle Scouts.
I was a scout.
Like
I was a scout.
Real scouts.
I was an Eagle Scout.
What level did you get?
I'm an Eagle Scout, yeah.
You were an Eagle Scout?
Yeah. Once you get it, they say you never lose it. So yeah.
It's kind of like saying you're not a former SMU Mustang. You're always an SMU Mustang, right?
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. I did my service project was there's a school for children of all different types of needs, disability, all that type of thing. And we built a swing set where you could attach a wheelchair to and the kids in wheelchairs.
Oh.
And then we painted the fences and everything. It was pretty cool. Yeah. It's probably about a mile from this house where I live right now, because I live about 5 minutes from my parents. It was close to there. So, the Arbor School. We built that back in 1993.
Oh, wow.
Fun times, yeah. And
oh, man.
August of 93, and then I got it in November 93. Anyways, hey, we're talking Eagle Scouts and Boy Scouts here on In the Lab. The nerdiest start possible. So,
It happens, man. That's what we do on In the Lab. That's kind of the point. In the Lab, it's where we geek out. So
I know
what we do.
This time a week ago, John, you and I were chit-chatting about what the offense is going to look like, because DeAndre Hopkins was gone. David Johnson's here. And we were thinking, well, it's going to look like this, and we're pretty confident that it'll look like this. And then Bill O'Brien threw a grenade into all of our talk, and he added a lot of speed in Brandin Cooks. Now, he's got to stay healthy, had the problems with the concussions, but one of those knock-on-wood things, if this guy's healthy, what is this offense possibly going to look like in 2020, John? Because and this is probably longer than a 20-minute podcast. This is something that we could talk about for hours and hours and hours on end. But in a fairly brief sort of setting, this kind of opens up a lot of different variables for Deshaun Watson and company, does it not?
Yeah, it does. And when you think about what's in the stable now, I mean, obviously the first word that comes to mind is speed. And, it's funny. I wish I would have thought a little bit more about this being a video in the lab. I mean, obviously some people will just hear the audio of it, but this being a video in the lab, could have just stepped to the side and could have got my whiteboard and kind of shown people some things of what they're able to do. But I think immediate, if I had one, I'd have to find one, but next time I'll think about it. The one thing about that people automatically think of is, this is just nothing but go routes, 9 routes. Let's go.
Nope.
The one thing about Cooks, and I wrote about this, and I think about this as it pertains to NFL draft. I think about guys with speed. Okay, why does speed matter? Obviously, we see speed manifest itself in Will's game and what he's able to do. Now, Will, when he's been healthy, the one thing that Will has been able to do is read defenses very, very well down the field. He knows when he can exploit defensive backs depending on leverage, what a safety's doing. If the safety's sitting low, he knows he can run a deep over route over the top of him. He understands all that. And he's become, hey, let's just throw it. Will's one of the best downfield threats in the league. There's no question about that. Will's understanding of how to use his speed to get deep and behind people is next level. I mean, it's outstanding. But the one thing about Will too, because he has that ability to get to beat people deep and get just blow by a defensive back, is it makes everything else underneath more open and open quicker. I think one of the things that I remember seeing about Will, and I remember seeing this in training camp at one point, he ran a deep comeback about 20 yards. And a deep comeback is you just run as fast as you're going to go. You're selling the fact that you're going to take that defensive back deep. And that defensive back is like, I got to turn and run. And then when he does that, you throttle down and then break it out, and you're wide open. And that's kind of the hope. And the faster you are and the faster that you can control that speed, then you've got more of an opportunity to be open. And one of the plays that I ended up finding was one very similar to that with Brandin Cooks. It was against the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns were playing basically a 3-deep coverage. But essentially, the corner on that side, T.J. Carey, knew that he had the deep third and he couldn't get beat deep. And so when Cooks comes off the line of scrimmage, he runs right at T.J. Carey, and Carey is like, he's got to respect it. So within 3 or 4 steps, Carey's already opened up his hips and is just taking off running. And Cooks knows full well, I'm running the comeback. But with his speed, he sold it. He ran right at him about 14 yards, 15 yards. And then Carey's like flying, like, I got to get deep. His momentum is all deep downfield. And Cooks is like, he throttles down, breaks it out. He's wide open. Jared Goff hits him, and away you go. Now, wide open in the NFL is completely different than wide open in college. But any quarterback will tell you, Deshaun will sit there and tell you, look, man, I'd love to throw to a wide open guy. I mean, wide open is like this in the NFL. But if you give me this in the NFL, I'll take that all day long. Yeah. I'll just destroy that defense. Now with Cooks and Fuller and Stills and Cobb, you get guys like this wide open. And there wasn't anybody in the picture with Brandin Cooks. And it was a simple comeback route. But because Brandin sold the route with his speed to go deep, the defensive back had to buy it. And he had to respect the fact that Brandin could go deep on him. And so you have that. And so it's kind of this push-pull of, as you're a corner, you're like, well, what do I do? I got to protect deep, because if I don't, he's going to run by me. And then against the Saints, they're playing a quarters coverage, so Marshawn Lattimore thinks he's got some help inside. He does, but the safety was a little late. So he gets past Lattimore a step or two, and Goff drops in the bucket, and Cooks makes this over-the-shoulder catch that's amazing. He took Lattimore deep. So now you start to play games with teams. Am I going deep? Because if not, I'll run that deep comeback on you. Well, the other aspect is, Drew, real quick, is getting across the field. One of the Texans' best routes that we've seen over the years is DeAndre Hopkins from one side, Will Fuller, and they're basically running like a scissors down the field. Yeah. Will Fuller's made a living on that route, and now you're running it with Fuller and Cooks, or Stills and Cooks, or Stills and Fuller. I mean, that's a route that is really tough to cover, especially when you have guys with that speed and you don't know, as defensive back, where those guys are going deep on you. So you got to respect it. Well, then all that underneath stuff is going to end up being open.
Respecting the deep ball is something that teams have really definitely been hyper aware of since the Texans got Will Fuller. Yep. And they've been hyper aware also of the bubble screen game. Think about it. The second or third game, maybe even I can't remember which game it was for Fuller. He scores a touchdown on it as a rookie. And ever since then, aside from the time that that Hopkins scored on it again at Seattle that year, aside from that, teams have been very, very upfront and very diligent about defending against that screen. And they've kind of bottled it up. But what did we see that do in the playoff game? That it looked like the Texans on that first drive were going to try that screen to Fuller, and Stills gets loose for that touchdown. So you started off this conversation by saying, a lot of people think it's just going to be 4 verticals going down the field. No, it's not. It's stuff like that. When you have a guy like that fast, and Will Fuller, who can scare teams with that ability on the screen, it causes them to be hesitant. It causes other guys to leak through. Well, now you've added another guy that has that type of speed in Cooks. Not the same receiver as Fuller. Definitely not the same receiver as Hopkins. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that he's going to just come in and take Hopkins' place. Apples and oranges. But he is a threat, and he is a major threat. And if you look at some of his highlights, he's caught the deep ball, and he's caught it very well. But you've seen him on end arounds. You've seen him on screens. He can do a lot of different things, and it just causes defenses, like you've just detailed and outlined a moment ago, causes defenses to absolutely have to guess at times and have to, like you say, respect this And when they do, it pops open so many other variables, other possibilities. And now you've got guys like Duke Johnson, like David Johnson, your tight end group, working underneath, getting chunks of yardage as well. It's going to be so much fun and so fascinating to see what this offense can do.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Brandin Cooks in the screen game. They're just there are a lot of things, in that Chiefs game, that play you're talking about, if I remember correctly, they were kind of in a bunch set over to the left side. And I think it was all three wide receivers. Well, you could see a scenario where it's two of the guys with Duke, and on the far side you've got Brandin Cooks, one on one. And so, because you've shown that play to the Chiefs, teams are looking at it going, hey, watch this. And so, you get a rolled coverage, and all of a sudden Deshaun looks over there and he's like, hey, wait a second, I got Cooks one-on-one over here against the corner that I know he can beat, but they're respecting that trips bunch so much. Hey, I'm just going to eat this up over here with Cooks.
Or you leave Fuller as the guy.
Right.
I mean, there's so many different things you can do with that.
Yeah, there's a lot that you can end up doing. And, look, it's not as if you can't do that with other receivers, but there are going to be certain things that those other receivers are probably not going to be able to put the pressure on the defense or to put the pressure on that corner as much as look, we get to a point where Kyle Warren starts showing what he can do. You widen him out as a tight end. I mean, that was where the Patriots feasted for years, because they would take a formation and put it one way, and then they would take Gronk on the other side. And I remember that in the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. They stuck a formation to the field, and they had Gronk go into the boundary. And they had to put a linebacker on Gronk because the formation called for it, because of the personnel they had in the game. And so the Seahawks tried to match it. And so when Gronk went out wide, they had to have a linebacker go out. Well, you can do the same thing. Now, if you got a guy like Kyle Waring and he can run and you can put him out wide, then there are a lot of different things that you can do with formations. But in particular with guys that have that sort of juice, you just put so much pressure on, okay, how are you going to – hey, coach, I can't cover that guy. I need some help on him. Or I'm just going to give up everything underneath and take away the deep ball. And there are going to be some teams that have to do that say we can't cover that. We can't cover that with what we do and how we're going to do it. And then you start getting risky. Like, okay, if we can't cover it, let's take the risk. Let's roll the dice. Let's Rex Ryan this thing, and let's send 7 guys after Deshaun. And now it's one-on-one, and you go by him, and Deshaun doesn't need much time. He just takes a step and throws it, and his fast guy goes and gets it. So you've got a lot of different things that you can do. The key is, again, going back to your first point, getting everybody out in the field, getting them healthy, making sure they stay healthy, and then exploiting every area on the field. And you and I've talked about that for a long time. I mean, that's offense. Can I do short left, deep right, intermediate middle? Can I hit all those areas with the group of guys I have on the field? And can I hit them? Can I hit all the other areas as well with the same guys I have on the field? And I feel like when I put Cooks and Fuller and Stills and Cobb and the tight ends and those 2 running backs, I feel like Deshaun has the opportunity to hit any one of the Hollywood squares, and he's going to have a winner, because you can't double cover everybody. And
how much do you think seeing what Kansas City did last year, really what they've done over the last 2 years, as far as just having – you and I talk about it on defense, having multiple pass rushers, just waves and waves of pass rushers is such a good thing. On offense, the Chiefs having all of these weapons, how much do you think seeing that has affected O'Brien and company as far as the way they want to build this offense?
I think it's impacted them to a degree. I think, and I go back to something that Bill just kind of said offhand. I remember when he got here in 2014, I remember one thing he said to me, he's like, we're too slow. I think Bill deep down would like to play fast, like tempo. I think he'd like to play fast. And I think he would like to have guys that can fly. And I don't know that the Chiefs were the first ones to do it, right, but they're the most recent ones to do it. And here's the other part I find fascinating. I was actually thinking about this today. When you think about the Chiefs, you think, boy, they're really good. And you're like, okay, well, Mahomes is good, right? Well, yeah, they must have put a bunch of first-round picks with all the other – no. You got Mecole Hardman in the second round. They got Tyreek Hill in the fifth. You got Kelsey in the third. Damian Williams, running back, I think was undrafted. Now, Sammy Watkins was a first-rounder, but he's with his second team. He's the only – and he's the third guy. He's the third guy there behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey.
So Rams here, yeah.
Yeah. So, you're talking about they don't have a bunch of first-round picks sitting out there at wide receiver, and yet they somehow get it done. So, all those people that were like, oh, you got to go get a receiver in the second round. You got to. Well, the Chiefs are showing you don't really have to. But I think it also goes back to the days with the Patriots. I mean, I think a lot of times about the 2017 Patriots offense that had Brandin Cooks, that had Chris Hogan, had Amendola, and Gronk. He was healthy that year. The year before he wasn't. When they had all those guys, that was the one that we saw in that September when we went up there. I mean, we beat the absolute bejesus out of Brady. I mean, Watt and Clowney were getting back there. Whitney forced a strip sack. I mean, they were destroying Brady, and yet he was still able to find guys wide open because he had Hogan's speed. He had Cook's speed. He had Gronk's speed. Now, it's relative, of course, to the guys that are covering him. He was able to absolutely destroy this defense, even though he was getting destroyed because he had those weapons that were just getting completely and totally wide open down the field. So between Amendola and Hogan and Cooks and Gronk, I mean, I remember thinking, how do we cover all these guys? Well, we had an opportunity to do it because there were guys that could rush the passer that day, 3 of them across the board that were really, really good. But they weren't going to face those guys all year long, obviously. And I think that's the case for the Chiefs. That's the case for us if everybody can end up staying healthy, that how are you going to end up stopping all of these weapons? And, oh, by the way, the quarterback can move, which is something Brady couldn't do, but obviously something Pat can do, and it's obviously something Deshaun can do. So, yeah, I do think the Texans probably learned a little bit from the Chiefs. But I think it goes back to probably some of the experience against the Patriots and looking what they were able to do as well. So I think there have been certain teams that have sort of shown the way of what you can do, especially if your guys outside can win matchups. And I think that was the important part about Brandin Cooks too. Because of that 2017 season he spent in New England, he knows this offense. So he knows – now, he's not going to know everything. There's going to be some wrinkles, obviously, because of Deshaun. But he knows this offense, and I think that's going to help with this time of unknown. Are we going to have OTAs? Are we going to have mini camps? Are we going to have all those things? We don't know. Some of the things they're going to be able to do virtually. Brandon's going to at least be able to understand where to be based on a play call as opposed to coming in and going, I don't know. And, oh, by the way, if it's a rookie – now, not only does he not really know where to go or what to do, he's learning an NFL game, which is completely different than the college game, especially in the passing game. So from that perspective, you get a 26-year-old guy with experience that knows the offense, who's got speed. Yeah, the downside is the concussions, and hopefully that won't be an issue. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But if it isn't, there's an opportunity to do some really good things with this offense for sure.
All right, let's wrap this up. Zach Tarrant is the still photographer for the Houston Texans, does great work. He's been here a couple years, 3 years now. He's got a new best buddy on the team now in Brandin Cooks because Cooks has an Instagram account. He's like the Archer. And then he's got a secondary Instagram account that's all photography stuff. He's like an avid photographer. He's gone to like Leica, the camera company. He's gone to – I mean, he's like a serious photographer. It's going to be fun seeing him talk shop with Zach Tarrant, who just did one of these Zooms recently in the last week or so with DP Sidhu.
Yeah, he's amazing. I happened to walk into the media workroom, which is just outside of our studio. It was sometime in January, and I walked out there, and we've got these long tables that are out there for media to work. And so after games, they're just photogs on their computers trying to get photos downloaded, all this kind of stuff. And, people writing on stories, all this. And so there's this long table. It's probably about, I don't know, you've seen it, probably 15 yards-ish, so probably 35, 40 feet, somewhere in that range. and it just had all these pictures laid out. And I looked, and I didn't see anybody in there. I just saw these pictures laid out. I was like, whoa. So I went over to look, and I saw Zach, and Zach was laying out all of his photos he had taken from the 2019 season that he was going to put together a book. And he was kind of laying it out how it was going to look. And I just started looking at the photos, and they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, phenomenal photos. Zach is just absolutely amazing photographer. And now he's got a friend in the photography business, which is pretty cool, with Brandin Cooks coming here.
All right. Well, it's always fun chatting with you, catching up with you. Next week,
brother.
We'll be just days away from the draft. Can you believe it? Seems like it's gotten there a little bit quicker this year. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I can't wait to see what happens. In between now and then, we'll have one more mock draft survey. And we've been doing 2 per week. Now we've only got 1 because of the pick getting dealt to the Rams. So we'll do that next week, and then I'll have 1 the day of the draft. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And as always, you got to check out the Harris 100 if you haven't already, because it's like I said, it's something you need. It's something you should memorize. It's something that will make you a better Texans fan and football fan in general. Sound good, John?
I appreciate it, Drew. Thank you very much. Yeah, you're at home. You can sneak in a little bit of reading time. So go check it out. Go read something. And then if you want to find out a little bit more on a guy, then there's always video on YouTube. You can find YouTube video, on anybody really. So you can always go that. So read.
You can find my resume reel from 2008 if you want to giggle at that. So go for it.
Yeah, that's the one thing at footballtakeover.com, my new site, that you don't see yet is video, but I don't know, maybe that's coming. But if you want more from the Harris 100, go to footballtakeover.com and you can check out. I got some in-depth scouting reports there that you definitely want to read as well. So a little bit of everything. But the Harris 100 is, yeah. And by the way, you don't have to memorize it. I don't even think I have it memorized.
I was being, yeah. I was
yeah,
kind of.
You were just kind of riffing, I know.
Yeah.
You were good.
Thanks, man. Good talking with you as always, and we'll see you again very soon on In the Lab. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.